Well, this week we're here with Robert Neff, who's the chair of the Palo Alto Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee. We're here to talk about bicycling, bike boulevards, and maybe even whether or not bikes and autos can just get along. So you've been involved in bicycling here in Palo Alto for a while, and you said you also commute to work as well, sometimes using the bicycle.
Yes. Well, I moved to Palo Alto over 20 years ago, and at the time I bicycled to work in the research park. And after about a year, I figured out about the Bull Park path, and found out that was the best way to get up there. And then about 6 or 7 years ago, I went to a community meeting about the changes on Oregon Expressway and about the crossings that would be updated as they updated Oregon Expressway, and that's when I got involved with the Bicycle Advisory Committee. Yeah. But I bicycle to work every day of the year pretty much.
So your committee's gotten really, really busy. It seems like from the agendas in the last few years as the city began working on this.
Yeah.
Probably, I would say one of the more successful plans that the city has come out in the last maybe decade or so, precisely because it actually has funding committed to it and has a lot of projects kind of already moving forward. I'd be curious to get your assessment of, it's been like 5 years since the city adopted it, pretty much 5 years to the day. How well do you think the city has done to date?
Well, I think if you compare it to the previous bicycle plans, what's in here is getting implemented. A lot of what's in here was in the 2003 bicycle plan, and nothing happened from that one.
Let's talk about some of the big things. What do you see as some of the biggest kind of projects and the most important initiatives that you would like to see come to fruition from this?
Well, the biggest part of it is creating a network of bicycle boulevards in Palo Alto. And for a long time we've had the Bryant Street Bicycle Boulevard, we've had other streets that worked a lot like bicycle boulevards, but especially we're less official. For example, Park and Wilkie were, and I think Maybell were in some sense of bike boulevards at the time of this. But this identifies on the order of a dozen streets across town and routes all through town to make it a network of bicycle boulevards instead of just one street here and one street there. So we hope that it will be a way that people can get around by bicycle on comfortable, low-stress routes where it's easy to get around by bicycle and they don't feel intimidated by
I was surprised to see that there were like 18 miles worth of bike boulevards that were identified. Some as short as like a connector between here and there. But I imagine those types are really important. It's not necessarily just the 2 mile stretch. It's like getting from one street to another.
When you do analysis of what people's experience of bicycling is, it's what they remember is the worst part. So if you're going down Middlefield Road, for example, which has bike lanes in South Palo Alto, and you get to an intersection and the bike lanes disappear, then it makes those bike lanes much less valuable because who wants to deal with that intersection? Yeah. So it's important to have these connections and make sure that they're low stress as much as possible.
But what exactly goes into creating a bike boulevard, and how hard is it to make one of those? I know that the city had like maybe $20 million or so budgeted, not counting the bike bridge in Charleston or Estradero, but just for the the more kind of run-of-the-mill bike boulevards. How far do you think that could take the city? Is it? And it'd be also just worthwhile to kind of ask about what are some of the features of a bike boulevard?
So the goal on the bike boulevards is to make them comfortable for bicyclists. We are not removing access for automobiles, but we're trying to make sure that the automobiles are slowed down if they're on the bike boulevard. So, for example, you can add speed humps just so that if you don't want to add stop signs because bicyclists do not want to have to experience stop signs on a bike boulevard. So stop signs tend to be very rare. On Bryant, for example, I think there's one at Loma Verde at a school crossing, and that's pretty much it. Right?
Yeah,
and downtown, there's a few because there's important cross streets. But for example, in North California, we're putting in a traffic circle there on Bryant in North California, and the goal there is so that you can get through that intersection, slowing down and keeping an eye on traffic, but not actually having to stop. So you see things like speed humps and also something called chicanes, which are sort of lateral movements of the traffic flow, which tends to slow down cars. So instead of seeing it straight, I can go 30 miles an hour fast, I have to swerve around.
So where is the city now on these new bike boulevards? Because as you mentioned, Bryant is like a legendary bike boulevard, pioneering one, and there's been others identified. Are these already kind of being built, or is this
So the city went through a planning process that started out, I think, within a year after this was passed. And first with consultants coming up with design plans, and then in the last couple of years, we got through that process and got to actually building, maybe in the last year, having people do the actual design. And so 6 of those, and you live Moreno, Murillo,
The Ambler
Ross.
They have an acronym.
Do they?
Yeah.
Ambler. Oh, that's what Ambler is.
Yes, the Ambler is just the first name of a bunch of streets. Lewis is in there.
Okay.
Part of Lewis
Right.
is in there.
East Meadow, maybe.
Parts of it affect East Meadow. But let's see. So anyway, so we've gone through the design, actually, the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and I think Council has, I think Planning and Transportation has looked at some of those designs too. Well, they'd certainly looked at approved the designs for implementation, and we are now have got to 100% designs for the implementation of that group, and that's about half of the ones that we have designs in the pipeline for.
So when do you think construction is going to begin on
So
this? How
the
long does
plan
that
that the contract just went out for bid this month for that group of bike boulevards, and they're hoping to get into a contract and get them done this season, this summer, and that's the goal. And then there's a second group which is coming along a little bit behind that, and they hope to get to 100% plans this year, and then construct those next summer. That includes the second half of Bryant. The second group includes the second part of Bryant from Meadow South, and especially Wilkie and Park Boulevard.
So it sounds like the Midtown area and like South Palo Alto are going to see quite a few changes in the next kind of year or two. On this front.
Yes, Ross and Moreno will see changes, and also Bryant from Meadow up to downtown. We'll see some changes too.
Cool.
When I think about bicycling, one of the more interesting projects is the bike share idea. And I know that we have different sort of groups of bicycles. We have the kids, for sure, who need to get to school safely. We have the cyclists who seem to be fearless, and they're running around. And
The Roberts,
perhaps.
Not anymore.
We have the
When I
average
was a
bicyclist.
teenager.
And then you also have the commuters, those people who are taking bikes for just part of the time. Who is the bike share program kind of aimed at? And is that the commuters more than the residents, or is it supposed to be for everybody?
It's especially beneficial for commuters, for people who come into Palo Alto without a bicycle, and then or get to their job somehow without a bicycle or with a car, and want to get somewhere with a bicycle. So, for example, connections we think could be served by the bike share would include getting from the Palo Alto train station to the Stanford Medical Center, getting from this area or downtown to the research park could be served by that.
That makes sense.
There's, I think there's also, if you have share stations more spread out, then people can consider taking a bike share to get to a transit station as well. I know I've talked to people who do that, say in San Jose, because actually, if you don't want to take your bike on Caltrain right now, and you don't have a bike locker, then it turns out there's a lot of theft and petty theft at the Caltrain bike stations, because the bikes are sitting there all day, and the thieves know that they're sitting there all day.
Yeah, and if you have a regular schedule, it's there every day at a certain time. For the entire day.
It's a very quiet place.
Yeah.
But it strikes me that Palo Alto's had like such great success with like Bike to School and these other bike initiatives. Bike to Work Day, which is coming I think next week.
Yeah.
Next
right?
Thursday.
But the bike share has been like a miserable failure. Almost no one used it. Can you explain that to me?
It's a
why has
curious
it been?
beast.
Why has it been such an exception in a negative way?
Well, I think the previous bike share had very few stations and very few connections you can make between those stations, and you had to drop off your bike at the stations. And we when we put it in, we didn't get a collaboration with Stanford going at all. And so there's no way to get, say, from downtown to up to Stanford or back, which would have been a really nice connection to be able to make with the bike share.
So the options are very limited with what you
Yeah,
can do with those.
you couldn't get into the research park. There's no place to drop it off.
But-
So one thing that's changing with bike share is the model that the city has been looking at the last year or so has been
Social bicycles,
the social bicycle system, but it's dockless, which means you don't have to put the bicycle back at a dock. You just have to lock it up somewhere, and so for example, you could take a bike from here if there was bikes at the Caltrain station, and go into the research park and lock it up where you were at work, and then somebody else maybe they would come out and grab it and take it to lunch. But it would tend to spread the bicycles out more, and the idea is that you would have an app on your phone and be able to figure out where the free bikes are.
And another feature is going to be just way more bikes and way more opportunities, right?
Yes,
Because there's going to be a huge expansion in the sheer number of bikes. So
The plan is to be-
Do you think? How optimistic are you? I mean, and I understand acknowledging the differences between technologies, but still, if something's failing so badly, does ramping it up to such an extent kind of like a feasible move? I mean,
Well,
you guys have looked at it. As a committee.
the whole bike share ecosystem has been completely disrupted in the last year. So because companies who are venture capital funded from China have decided that they'll do bike share, and they are just putting bicycles out on the street, sometimes bicycles that don't even meet American safety standards, and give people this app and charge not very much money, and it's not clear how they are going to make their money back. But as a result, the companies like Social Bicycles are having to change what they're offering to be so that it's competitive with essentially free and disorganized. This was turned down by council back about 3 months ago, and the city is still working with Social Bicycles to figure out is there another way to do it, and they're finding they can get completely different deals that are much more.
It sounds like the city was going to go for like a hybrid of the old vendor and the new one. Like Motivate and the Ford system were going to like pay for some of it, but Social Bicycles would provide the technology, the kind of GPS-based system, and there was to be some kind of three-way almost agreement, and it kind of fell apart in the final phases. And I think, and from what I understood right now, it's Motivate is kind of out of the picture with the new deal, or unless I'm misunderstanding it. And the city's
I think
working-
I don't know what the current New Deal will be, but
Right.
I think, let's see. I think it's been more just between the city and Social Bicycles, and also hopefully something that can work with our city and Menlo Park and further up the peninsula. Social Bicycles is already up in San Carlos, so if you get off the Caltrain at Hillsdale, you can get on a Social Bicycles bike share up there.
Yeah.
Although, when I go up there, I take my bike on the train.
It's a little bit faster, maybe.
I'm in a mode where I'm used to taking the bike on the train, and I'm on the train where it's not too busy. And if I was going up to San Francisco every day, and getting from the train station to the financial district, then your choices are you can take a bike, and there's not a whole lot of space on those trains anymore. There's a lot of space, but there's more bikes.
Yeah.
And or you can take the bus, or you can get off and look for the bike share bike right there.
Yeah.
So San Francisco, they have a lot of people who will use it, and they're getting pretty good usage of 2 or 3 rides a day on each bike.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the regional aspect because I kind of wanted to get into that a little bit. It's fine for each city to do its own thing, but when you're trying to navigate, as you know, from city to city to city, it must seem like you need some regional cooperation. And I understand that the Managers Mobility Partnership is trying to create some sort of regional network.
Yes.
Is that a new thing, or is there another group that's been trying to make a connecting path for a long time?
Well, people have recognized that this is a problem for a long time, but politically, it's just the way the peninsula is. Every power is in each city, and then there's some power in the counties, and then the counties hardly seem to talk to each other at all, right? So if you're organizing something between Palo Alto and Menlo Park, that's 2 different counties. It's like, forget it.
It's a
So
different
if you want to take the bus from Redwood City to Mountain View, you have to change buses, and it's really inconvenient. You come up here and you go looping around the transit center a little bit, and then you get off and you go looping around the transit center. You could have bus stops on El Camino Real and get off one and get on the other, or you could have buses that go through. But anyway, so they're working on that, and I think we have a good network of bike boulevards, and we have some ideas for how the connections should be to Menlo Park. And I hope this will encourage Menlo Park and Redwood City, and to the extent that Atherton is part of this, Atherton to figure out what the through roads are that get from one side of town to the other. And we can improve on that as well. We don't really have a well-marked route that goes from, say, the middle of Menlo Park to the middle of Mountain View. But there are actually a couple of routes that work, but they're not really, when you get to the edge of Palo Alto, it's not clear. Yeah, you have to know. Actually, that's one of the things that's in the bike boulevard plans is a lot more signage and a lot more, it's just going to be more obvious that you're on a good street for bicycling. And instead of just riding through the neighborhood, there'll be sort of these super share things on the streets that sort of say, oh, here's a bike boulevard street. If you take this street and it's going the right direction, this might be a good choice.
Yeah.
And so that'll help. And more signage that says that way to Mountain View and that way to Menlo Park.
I'm sure that'll help.
Okay, I want to switch directions for 1 second and ask about east-west, because we've been talking about north-south for a little
Sure.
while.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, Charleston and Estradero, I know that your committee has recently seen the latest design, kind of 65% for that portion, and that's kind of a corridor that almost stands apart from all the other corridors identified in the plan.
Yeah.
It's its own beast. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about what the new improvements will be over Charleston and Estradero, since that street has a lot of interest from residents. There's a lot of baggage there with traffic conditions and things. And then after that, I'm going to ask you about the iconic bike bridge, which is the other east-west. I mean, your thoughts on that. But let's start with Charleston and Estradero. Like, what are the changes that's proposed, and what is the timeline for achieving these changes as far as you can recall?
So the traffic patterns are going to be changed some, but mostly the changes were done for the interim project, not so much they're not getting changed much more now. The main difference on that is that instead of having paint in different places that would limit where people could drive, there's going to be hardscape. There's going to be places you can put trees and flowers in the middle of the street, which means you can't make a left turn arbitrarily down the corridor. And there's going to be a parking buffered bike lane up near Wanabriones Park. That's not going to change the auto traffic lanes at all. There are finally going to be bike lanes across El Camino Real on Charleston or Estradero. This is one of the, people get involved with volunteer boards for a number of reasons, and that is the biggest reason that I'm on payback is because I had to go through that intersection for 10 years and without bike lanes.
So it's going to have one of those green stripes that goes across?
First of all, there will be a lane. right now, the bike lane disappears on either side. So you end up having to be a little.
Is it going to be one of those Dutch intersections where the bikes could have like the right of way, no matter which way they go, like the frame?
Yeah, no, that's not planned on it. I don't think we don't have plans for bike lanes on El Camino Real at this point.
Okay. Yeah. but I think you touched on.
And there's some changes that there's. I go to a church that's on Charleston, between Middlefield and Alma, and so we're going to lose the left turn off Charleston into the church, and so we'll have to go down to the end of the block and make a U-turn to get in. Okay, that's what we have to do.
As I was mentioning, you do kind of touch on one of the major challenges of implementing bike projects in Palo Alto is that there are these kind of barriers like El Camino and Alma and the highway, which I promised I was going to get to that. The highway 101. The city has been talking for years now about building this bike bridge to 101, and that's in the plan, and that's also in the infrastructure plan. I was hoping to get your assessment about how you see that project going, and whether you think it's going to make a big difference once it's in place. I'm not sure if you think there's going to be a lot of users of that.
So I think it'll be a big difference to have it there year round. Right now, there's a crossing underneath there that's only only half the year. It's going to be sort of state of the art for this century instead of for the 60s when that other one went. So it's going to be wider. It's not going to have barriers in the middle of it that practically make you get off your bicycle, for example. It's going to have an there's an improvement to West Bayshore, where right now the sidewalk sort of goes into the street on one side of the street, and part of the bike bridge has a way of maintaining a sidewalk across the bridge over Adobe Creek, which is really nice. The main thing is that right now the city went through that design review, that architectural contest
Star Search, yes.
Which just nobody realized how complicated that was going to be and how expensive that could have been. It was talked about as though it was just this little contest that would happen at the beginning and then everything else would just happen the same way. And they got partway into that, and Public Works realized that it was going to inflate the costs of the whole project by about 50%, I think. And they said, no, we're not. We can't just open our wallets and spend as much money as it ever takes.
To be fair, staff did have like a budget that it gave to all the contestants in the design contest. And they said, make it 10 million, maybe 12 million, but
yeah.
But then,
but when the reality of actually building it, it came in,
that's always the annoying part, the reality.
Yeah,
once the engineers start looking at the plans and start. So, are you okay with not having an iconic bridge, but having just a functional bridge? What if other cities aren't sufficiently jealous?
Well, I hope they'll be so jealous that they build more bike overcrossings on 101. If you think about where we are now versus 10 years ago, Palo Alto is about to. We're really moving forward on this, and it's the consultant is very good, and they're coming up with great ideas, and it's going to happen. And it's going to include a connection from West Bayshore over to East Meadow alongside the creek as well. So it'll be easier to get to that bridge without having to go onto West Bayshore, which is kind of an intimidating street. And at the same time, over in Mountain View, we have Adobe Creek, not Adobe.
Stevens Creek?
No, between here and Stevens Creek, there's a new bridge that was put in, which connects you near Google. And at the same time, East Palo Alto is putting in a bridge basically at the bottom of Newell Street across near University. So to get across 101 down there, you'll be able to get through without having to ride on University Avenue as well.
So if we just fast forward 3 or 4 years, this is going to be like biking heaven out here.
Well, it'll be better. and there,
good expectation management.
Well, it'll get rid of these stressful, difficult ways to get across the freeway. Because right now, otherwise, you don't have a very good connection.
Yeah.
If you happen to work at Google and live in Palo Alto, for example, then what connection do you make that gets you across there?
I want to bring up real quick before we wrap up just the dangers that bicyclists face. There was the tragic fatality up on Page Mill Road. Approaching 280 when the bicyclist was trying to cross over his early morning, I guess. Are you feeling, as a bicyclist, any more concerned these days with traffic congestion kind of ramping up, or do you think that the kind of dangers to bicyclists is about the same and everyone needs to be very cautious as they're
Well, I think as we improve the bicycle facilities, they get safer for everyone, and as more bicyclists are on the road, then automobile drivers are used to seeing them.
Hopefully there's fewer automobile drivers too, because some of them are riding. But
it's remarkable how many cars there are on the road. But certainly safety for bicyclists and safety for pedestrians as well is something that we need to keep looking at and avoiding. One of the projects that the city is working on with the Barron Park neighborhood is ways to improve the Bull Park path so that the bicycle users and the fast joggers and the slow walkers and the slower walkers with dogs can all coexist on a path that is not that wide. And so we're trying to figure out how do we make sure that the bicyclists can recognize the walkers and not surprise and startle them. And how can we make sure that the walkers are paying attention and not.
You just shrink everyone, and then they can all share the road.
Yeah. So it's an old path that's only 9 feet wide, and if you look at what the standard would be for a new path that you built for that kind of traffic, it would probably be there might be 2 separate paths, or there would be at least more width so that you could kind of segregate the faster versus the slower traffic.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring in multiple kinds of users, because it just seems like when the city talks about complete streets and it's talking about use of the street by everybody.
Yeah.
I know it can become a conversation where people start pointing fingers at the other group, whatever group that they get in conflict with, whether it's the cars to the bicyclists towards the cars, the older person looking at the young person who's
and there's the runner who hates everyone.
Those antisocial runners. Let me bring this question to you then. So you're on Payback, the committee. How do people funnel feedback to the city about bicycling? Can they do it through you? You have a voice with the city.
We do, but the best thing to do is to use the Palo Alto 311 system, because that way it goes to city staff, it gets tracked. They know that no one, someone will see it and it will get a response. And they can keep track of whether they're responding to people or not, which is a big improvement over what used to happen before, where you just send something in and you just never knew. If someone had read it or not, it was never very clear, 5 years ago. And even if you found out later, oh yeah, they read it and they were doing something about it, you wouldn't necessarily find out. But the Palo Alto 311 system can work pretty well. Payback is not very good at, it's not a good route for getting things changed very quickly. It's if there's something that you see that's dangerous or that needs attention, then you really need to bring it straight to transportation staff, and that's through Palo Alto 311.
Yeah. And are the committee meetings open to people who are just curious about what's happening?
Absolutely. It's a very informal committee, because it's just a committee. It's not a commission, and it's just advisory. It's actually advisory to transportation staff with the city. It's not advisory to city council or to any other body that actually has power. So it means that we don't have power except through persuasion, of course. But it's pretty much open to anyone who is interested in bicycling or pedestrian issues. If we could really actually use more people interested in pedestrian issues on the committee, because we tend to be dominated by people who've been interested in this for a long time as bicyclists.
People just aren't passionate enough about walking. There's no pedestrian shops opening up on Cal Avenue. Yes.
There are plenty of people who walk, but
they don't do it with passion like bicyclists.
They don't buy special gear.
Yeah.
They should, though.
anyway.
When does the committee meet?
The committee meets the first Tuesday of every month, except I think not July. We're off in July, and I think we'll be meeting at the downtown library at 6 p.m. For the next few
Okay.
meetings.
All right. We've covered a breadth of issues. Was there anything else that you guys wanted to raise?
Well, I had kind of just like a kind of high-level question. I mean, given that the council is always talking about wanting Palo Alto to be the best in the world in many, many different realms, like technology, sustainability, and biking is one of them. They really want to make Palo Alto kind of like one of the nation's best. I kind of wanted to get your take on where the city stands relative to other cities you've biked in, both in the peninsula and maybe elsewhere. And on a related note, what would be the one change you would like to see implemented to make things safer and more pleasant for bicyclists?
Well, I think the city has made a lot of changes in the last 5 or 6 years to improve, to really look at what infrastructure we have and to figure out, that's a spot with a problem that's a choke point or it's difficult, and so let's see. So what would be the one good thing? Oh gosh. Well, getting these new bike boulevards done will be terrific.
Okay.
I think, and getting that, I think that will get more people out on seeing that bicycling, they can get around town by bicycling and get to a lot of destinations.
Is Palo Alto going to overtake Davis anytime soon in terms of number of people biking or anything like that?
Well,
or is it just?
I think if we could somehow pull in the counts from Stanford University, we would be really good. Because if you travel over there, you realize, wow, there are a lot of bike racks, and I still can't find a place to park my bike because they're all full.
So no need for fancy bridges. Let's just fudge the numbers a little.
But we still have, compared to other cities on the peninsula, we do very well in terms of number of people who are bicycling and number of people who are bicycling to work. And I think that's if you look at what the link is to where people work and how easy that is for bicycle here, it's much better here than in some other areas where we manage to have roads that are reasonable for bicyclists to go on and don't seem too intimidating. As I moved to a new work location, which I'm fortunate is on the edge of a residential neighborhood, so I can get to that work location without having to go on a big busy street. And we have a lot of places kind of like that in Palo Alto where you can get around pretty easily and get all the way to where you're going.
Yeah. So. Okay. Well, Robert Neff, thank you for being here, and thank you for helping us to explore the topic of bicycling. We should mention that next Thursday is Bike to Work Day.
Oh, yes.
People want to get their bikes out. If they're not already out, there'll be Energizer stations around town.
That's right. One, let's let's see, one right here at California Avenue,
Train station.
at the train station. One on just past the Wilkie Way Bridge.
Okay.
There's, I think, in front of City Hall is
Usually there's
or at the Alma Bridge on the way to Mountain View.
Somewhere downtown.
To Menlo Park.
Yeah.
You know.
And it'll be
I
on
go
the
south.
website.
Somewhere downtown. But it's all gonna be
And there is a website, and you can see a map of where all the Energizer stations are. So you can go from one to the next, and eat a lot of coffee cake.
There's also a ton of informal ones like all over, like the research park with like.
Yeah, they're on that
Yeah.
map as well.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
Cool.
Okay, sounds like fun. Thank you. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Okay, well, that wraps it up for this week on Behind the Headlines. If you like what you hear and want to subscribe to us, just hit the subscribe button below. To follow all of Palo Alto news, go to paloaltoonline.com. And if you want to comment on the issue of bicycling, go to Town Square, paloaltoonline.com/square. That does it for this week. We'll see you next week.